The paintwork of the body is quite thin and soft, made on a water basis, which is why it is rapidly overgrown with chips and scratches. In addition to the outer panels, the paintwork and the closed parts of the body are prone to damage. It is wiped with seals, destroyed at the attachment point of the gas stop in the fifth door. The owners are not happy with the corrosion resistance of body iron. Threshold, arches, junctions of thresholds with front fenders and rear arches, the edge of the roof and the filler neck of the gas tank are most susceptible to the appearance of mushrooms. Often, red spots are also present on the tailgate, in a sedan on the corners of the lid, in hatchbacks on the frame around the glass. The presence of rust under the roof seam lining is also considered a common occurrence. Often the problem is discovered late, during the replacement of the windshield, and corrosion has time to fit the frame located next to the seam. Welding is required. In the Impreza XV, rust can also be found in the place where the roof rails are attached. If the body of the Subaru Impreza III has not been subjected to additional corrosion treatment, many rust spots can also be found on the bottom. The most prone to red disease are the step, located in the area of U200B, U200B, the niche of the fuel tank, the trunk floors, the inside of the wheel arches, the side members and the edges of the floor, plugs, subframes and exhaust system elements. Another significant problem is the low rigidity of the body. If the car is operated only within the city, this trouble will not cause much trouble, which cannot be said with frequent trips off-road. The presence of diagonal loads leads to the appearance of cracks in the paint, in the gutters of the roof and the opening of the fifth door, as well as violation of the tightness of the seams of the rear panel. It is fraught with corrosion. In dead specimens, while driving over bumps and diagonal loads, the body will crunch. It is worth noting that the Subaru Impreza III is presented in two body styles: sedans, wide, GV code, and narrow, GE, hatchback, GR, wide, GH, narrow. In addition to the outer panels, these versions differ from each other in the number of amplifiers, the thickness of the metal and the cost of body parts. Wide ones are more expensive. Be sure to check the VIN before buying, because in case of serious damage, these machines are restored from the cheapest parts. Among the additional equipment in the list of problem areas are bumpers, crack on contact with curbs and bumps, and door opening limiters. Not happy with the quality and front optics, in which, in addition to protective plastic quickly overriding, lenses have a short service life, burnout. The Subaru Impreza III powertrain line consists of atmospheric 1.5, EL15, 2.0, EJ204, 2.5, EJ253, and turbocharged internal combustion engine of the EJ series 2.0, EJ20T, EJ20G, EJ20K, EJ205, EJ207, 2.5, EJ255/EJ257. There are also diesel cars with a 2-liter engine, but in our market they are presented in limited quantities. All engines are quite reliable, but at the same time they are demanding on the quality of service and fuel. The early failure of these units is somehow connected with oil, or rather with its absence. So, for example, a stock engine from the first kilometers has an increased oil appetite, which grows in parallel with the mileage. The rings wear out. For cars with a mileage of more than 100,000 km, the oil level can drop very rapidly, which leads to the rapid death of the internal combustion engine. In addition, this unit is prone to grease leakage through gaskets and seals. High heat load and a weak cooling system, which does not do its job well, adversely affects the motor. Of the less significant shortcomings, there are periodic malfunctions in the operation of the electronic throttle, turns begin to float, a modest resource of candle. When replacing, there is a risk of damaging the tips, ignition modules and their connectors, and ignition coils. If you often drive with a minimal amount of fuel in the tank, the fuel pump will also not last long. A timing belt is used in the timing drive, which should be changed along with all the rollers every 60–80,000 km, while cheap analogs should be avoided. It is also necessary to monitor the state of the lambda probes. There are 4 of them, and each has its own power relay, since the state of the engine depends on the correctness of their operation. Despite the impressive list of vulnerabilities, with proper maintenance, the engine can last up to 300,000 km, but as a rule, it is changed earlier to the 2-liter EJ204. In a 2-liter engine, in a stock one, the oil level drops quite quickly, but here this trouble is more often caused not by an oil burner, but by leakage of lubricant through gaskets and seals. With significant contamination of the crankcase ventilation system, seals may begin to squeeze out. If the owner does not keep track of the amount of oil, everything can end up turning the liners. Particular attention should be paid to the cooling system, since if it is in an unsatisfactory condition, the likelihood of overheating increases, due to which the block leads to the sleeves are deformed. Things are also bad with the cooling of the fourth cylinder, which leads to the appearance of scoring of the cylinder walls and the piston starts knocking, at first only in a cold engine and then on a warm one. The resource of the internal combustion engine is about 350,000 kilometers. The EJ253 motor, which was offered from the US market, is more prone to oil consumption and overheating. Cooling of the rear of the engine is not optimized. The reliability of the engine is negatively affected by heavy loads on the crankshaft and liners and the use of thin liners. Turbocharged engines have the same problem as the naturally aspirated EJ series, but due to the great load, they appear earlier, after 100,000 km. When using low-quality gasoline, detonation increases significantly, which increases the load on the block and connection rod bearings. Also, in the list of common ailments are the breakage of the connecting rods over the third and fourth cylinders, they stick to the liners, and the early failure of the turbine. It is very important to monitor the oil pressure, because when it decreases, the engine wedges. Subaru Impreza III buyers can choose from two types of transmissions, 5 and 6-speed manuals, the latter is installed only with top-end engines, as well as 4 and 5-speed automatic transmissions. Manual transmissions are reliable, but in conjunction with turbo engines, they can bother with breakdowns. So for example, in the 5-step, because of the high torque, gears cut off, synchronizers rings and shafts or 2, 3, 5 gears wear out quickly. Another weak point is the center differential unit, in the event of a malfunction of which wedges the lock-up clutch, fuel consumption increases and jerks appear. The clutch can be restored, flushing the clutches and changing the oil is required, but if the lubricant is chosen incorrectly, there will be almost no blocking, you need a special lubricant with a reverse viscosity. If there is a problem, it is better to buy a center differential unit, which will save you from problems for 100,000 km to 300 USD. Negatively high loads affect the rear civet joints and gearbox. Also, at risk are the cardan shaft and front civet joints, usually they go about 200,000 km. The 6-step is stronger and handles more torque better. Of the problem areas of the manual transmission, only a weak center differential can be distinguished, which with an aggressive driving style cannot withstand even 100,000 km. After 150,000 km, plastic shift fork linings may require attention, they wear out. It is also worth noting that the presence of an ailment leads to accelerated wear of the clutches and the forks themselves. Things are not bad with the reliability of the 4-speed automatic 4EAT. Most often, automatic transmission failures occur at high mileage and are caused by significant contamination of the valve body and failure of the liner pressure solenoid or EPC. For cars with a mileage of more than 200,000 km, the oil pump seal leaking, lock lining, low clutch drum, and the rear hub bearings may require replacement. Of the operational disadvantages, it is worth noting higher fuel consumption with worse acceleration dynamics than previous with other gearboxes. If you rarely change the oil, you will have to change the clutches more often and clean the valve body. It is clogged with friction wear products. The 5-speed automatic 5EAT was developed by Jetco and is essentially an analog of the JR507E. It has a different body and valve body design. This box, although it serves 250–300,000 km, is considered one of the most capricious transmissions in the line. Most of the breakdowns that befall this gearbox are minor, but still they are. The list of weak points includes solenoids, wiring, and sensors. The pinion axles and bearings do not differ in safety merit, the wear of which is fraught with damage to the front axle drive shaft and its differential. With infrequent service, early attention is required for the oil pump, the brake band of the torque converter lock-up lining, and the overdrive drum flywheel. In addition, the operation of the gearbox on dirty oil is the main cause of overheating of the box. On both axles of the Subaru Impreza III, McPherson-type independent suspension is used. The chassis of this model deserves only positive feedback because it provides a good level of comfort and excellent handling. Things are not bad with the reliability of consumables. If you do not take into account the need to change the drains and stabilizer bushings every 40–80,000 km, running gear repairs have to be done no more than once every 120–150,000 km. Shock absorbers and silent blocks are the first to be handed over. It is worth noting that versions with a wide body use other levers, the replacement of which is more expensive. In addition, such modifications have differences in components and calibrations. In the steering, a rack and pinion mechanism with the hydraulic power steering is used. The steering rack experiences a fairly large load of the rod, which is why it starts to flow closer to 100,000 km. In most cases, replacing the stem seals is enough to fix the leak. It is not worth tightening with the replacement of the stuffing box, since the rail is low on the stem, moisture gets into it, which provokes the appearance of rust. The rail bushings also clog quickly and knock appear while driving over bumps. The power steering pump does not differ in survivability, begins to boost closer to 150,000 kilometers, which finishes off dirty oil and lowers its level. The brake system in the Subaru Impreza III is efficient and reliable. The only thing you need to watch out for is the pipes of the system. They are prone to corrosion. It is difficult to judge the resource of consumables, since it strongly depends on the modification of the car and driving style. Selling Subaru Impreza III is made of inexpensive finishing materials, which tend to overwritten. As a rule, already by 100,000 km, cheap plastic from which the central panel is made, door cards and door seals are covered with scratches. Inserts made of silvery plastic quickly give up, the paint peels off. The climate control knobs and seat upholstery resist wear poorly. Before selling a car, restoration work is carried out in the cabin to hide its real condition. They paint, varnish, make an aqua print, etc. Another disadvantage is the presence of crickets and the lack of normal sound insulation, which greatly affects the acoustic comfort. When inspecting a car, it will not be superfluous to check the floor for moisture and corrosion. By 100,000 km, the radiator starts to leak. Among the operational disadvantages, the owners know the need to get used to the pedal assembly. The gas and brake pedals are separated by level. But the ergonomics of this model is at a very high level. Comfortable seats, convenient and intuitive equipment controls, a good overview. Of the weak points of the cabin equipment, it is necessary to single out and note very reliable ventilation system, in which the fan motor fails early, wedges closer to 100,000 km, the damper control rods fly off, the radiator corrodes and flows. There are no significant complaints about the onboard electronics, which, even after the introduction of a large number of additional devices, continues to work stably. In general, the Subaru Impreza III is an interesting specimen with a good margin of safety for most nodes. Despite this, the purchase of this model by hand can be compared to a lottery, especially when it comes to charged versions, since this car, as a rule, is not taken for a quiet ride around the city. In addition, it is not worth buying an Impreza with the last money, since this machine may require decent financial investments with age. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your view that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.